So biggest problem that I saw was that every single hardware company I worked at, Spire Global, Spaceflight, ABL, Astranis, all building very complex hardware, is that you would build these bespoke, beautiful, perfect schedules internally, and you'd be like, "Hell yeah, who got this schedule?" But that's constantly moving. Whether a supplier's behind, whether design engineers behind, whether marketing's behind on a release for a specific
Mm.
that schedule is constantly in flux, and what we're using currently does not take full advantage of the internet. I mean, we've had 45 years or so with the internet, and we've had 15 of really, really understanding how to harness it, but we're still using email to send a static project file to another entity, and then having these biweekly or weekly or daily meetings just to integrate schedules. And I'm just like,
Mm. Mm.
why do we not have schedules and software that allows us to parse out the most granular piece of your schedule so that you can keep everything private and internal to your organization except for what you need to collaborate with somebody else on? We're not taking full advantage of this wondrous gift with the internet, kind of stuck in internet 1 or 2.0 with our fundamental collaboration because of all these compliance and security concerns. But we have the technology, we can build it.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Hi, everybody. This is Mark Verbankov, and welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. This is going to be episode number 173. And today we're going to be focusing on not necessarily how a specific technology is impacting society as a whole, but rather how a supporting technology is going to be impacting a specific industry that has a number of the emerging technologies. And I guess we could say longer standing technologies that have been the subject of focus on this podcast a number of times. And this is going to be specifically how digital platforms are going to be streamlining processes and really enhancing collaboration for advanced machinery development. So that industry would comprise of like robotics, drones, space vehicles, etc. It's quite an interesting topic, and certainly a little bit different than what we typically have on the podcast. So it's great to move away from, say, artificial intelligence for a little bit and move into something that's a little bit different, which was for me quite surprising how impactful this can actually be. We do talk quite a bit about how project management is perhaps still a little bit archaic, and how there are current present-day solutions that can not just enhance project management, but as I mentioned at the beginning, really enhance the collaboration between organizations in a much more real-time manner, which leads to a lot of the impacts and effects, which I think that most of you will find very interesting in this episode in the industries that are kind of under discussion today. So we don't just talk about that. We also, as is typical in these episodes, we do go down other paths or other little rabbit holes. So we talk about, as the episode focuses on manufacturing quite a bit, also, of course, data and privacy as part of these digital platforms that are trying to enhance collaboration between different organizations, right? How does the data and the privacy aspect of that get involved? And how is it secured? And then, of course, how this is going to be impacting the future of advanced machinery development in, the coming years, which is one of the main things that we like to talk about on this podcast, of course. So we do touch on a number of different things, but those are some of the major themes. And my guest today is very, very insightful. Pretty much every single question that I asked was obviously answered as detailed as possible, even when there were some sort of potential, shall we say, like I don't know if industry secrets or certain things that he was unable to dive into for privacy reasons, but other than that, it was tremendously well explained perspectives on each of the questions that I asked. And of course, my guest is John Conafay. He is a U.S. Air Force veteran and the CEO and co-founder of Integrate, which is building program management software with a systems engineering approach for the world's most ambitious machines. Previously, he was an early employee at 3 space unicorns. He was the head of BD at ABL Space Systems, was one of the first 10 employees at Astranis, and interned at Spire Global early on. He also worked at the office of the CFO NASA headquarters while at Bryce Tech, and was a director of business development at Spaceflight. So it's a really interesting discussion today. And as I said before, it gets a little bit away from the artificial intelligence typical discussions that we have, which is a nice, pleasant change. One could call it a palate cleanser. But nonetheless, it's an interesting topic in and of itself. And I hope that you get some benefit, some interest, and some value from the conversation. Thanks for listening as always. Hi, John. Thanks for coming onto the podcast today to talk about something that is a little bit near and dear to me that I haven't touched on for a while on the podcast because all the hype is about artificial intelligence. So it's great to get a breath of fresh air to talk about some more, I guess, hardware systems or physical systems that are, of course, going to be impacted by software systems. So it's great to have you onto the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I feel like we could have gone down 3 different rabbit holes in the pre-podcast about all of our paths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe some of that will shine through in the podcast. It's always interesting to see kind of where we end up. Should we start with your interest in, we'll be talking about space, we'll be talking about vehicles, kind of some advanced hardware technology that's out there. What led you into this world? And then we'll also get into, software and how it's developing and improving the development of these technologies.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, as we discussed before, I've been fascinated with technology since I was, I think, like 5. Frankly, we got our first like compact computer in the living room, or I think we might have had Mac too. Fortunate enough. And, it was the kid tearing apart VCRs and trying to put them back together. Sometimes successfully, sometimes not. Overclocked a Pentium 200 MMX when I was in 6th grade, I think, and like 11 or so. And then I was talking to you about building that artificial muscle when I was 8 or something like that. Was just always loved hardware and technology and human interface with it all. And I'm sure comics had a huge role in that, and Cable being one of my favorite characters and Legacy Virus and all that. So, the technology bug has been with me since I was tiny. And I just kind of feel lucky that I found an area that I was able to dive into that really let me explore it with the space industry, particularly, but even with the Air Force before that, and then recording music somewhere in there. When I was a gearhead about microphones and music and all that. So it's been really kind of a collaborative approach to loving technology through all of the many passions that I've had throughout my life. Yeah.
Very interesting. And as you said, you are, I think, very lucky to have that early initial interest and being able to carry it on into a career and, what you do for a living. I think that's maybe becoming more and more rare nowadays, where everybody's just wanting to become like a YouTube star or, Twitch or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we are going to be talking about how software is improving or impacting the development of hardware like, drones, autonomous vehicles, and space technology, which is not actually something I've thought about too much. It's mostly about the actual tech itself and how, businesses and governments and organizations in general can adopt it and how it can be used. So I'm curious, and I hope that my questions elucidate some other things that I haven't thought about. Maybe we can start with like a little bit of, I don't like history, but maybe like background. Not specifically about you, but about like how software has played a role in the past. Has it played a role? Was it just kind of spreadsheets and planners, and that's how people would develop automobiles and I don't know, like space rockets and things like that? Maybe just give us a little bit of a primer before we jump into like obviously what you guys are doing at Integrate and kind of what the future of all this is gonna turn into.
Yeah. So the U.S. industrial base was massive, obviously through World War One, World War Two, and we were very focused on manufacturing goods and mostly for the defense industry. And there's this really, really incredible, I would say spectacular, but it's more just kind of incredible graph about the supply chain post World War Two
Mhm.
that has hundreds and hundreds of suppliers that build planes and munitions and tanks and all of these things. And then the consolidation of those to the five that we know today: Lockheed, Northrop, L3. I mean, Northrop has swallowed up quite a few others currently. And so we saw this world change from all of that heavy manufacturing, particularly in the United States, toward software. And Andreessen, I believe it was Andreessen quote, "Software will eat the world," and it has. And now with AI, we're seeing software eat software, which is already intense. Um, and and what I think people are realizing is that all of this incredible focus on software or building software has left this really, really big gap in our manufacturing base. And we've reached a limit to our capabilities um, with, you know, not offshoring certain manufacturing capabilities and things like this. But we've reached a limit to the efficiency of our technological
Mm.
uh, capability, mostly referring to hardware. So, we saw as software started to eat the world, we saw software built for software. So Jira, now we have Linear, GitHub, all of these things, and there was a spectacular renaissance that made a lot of people a whole lot of money. And defense, even though it was what really supported Silicon Valley initially, has taken a backseat and frankly was very shunned by Silicon Valley for a long time until we started to experience in this generation wars that felt a little bit more close to home and a little bit more realistic. Obviously Afghanistan was going on for 20 years. The people didn't feel as connected and were just like, what is this boondoggle? Whatever the questions about. I'm not trying to get into anything there. Um, and uh, and then we saw the Ukraine war happen, where there was like this very close to home sort of sense of justice for the Western world and things like this. And then other wars that are happening as well. And that mindset is kind of shifted. It kind of like snapped people out and been like, wait a second, this is a little closer to home than we're used to. We need to pay attention. And then we have some much more altruistic and really really cool hardware being built out there. That another controversial figure, but like SpaceX and Tesla that have shown that we are capable of building really really spectacular and really incredible things. And not only has it shown us that we can build all these, and so I'm going pretty far.
I love it. If I have to ask 4 questions through the interview, excellent. Go for it.
Awesome. Uh, but these companies kind of showed us that we can build really, really cool, difficult
Mm.
things that benefit a lot of people and bring the costs down, even in the United States. And it's been this training ground for so many other people that have dealt with the intense and immense frustration of building hardware with tools built for software. So I promise I'm pulling it back around.
Yeah.
We had, the 20 years or more of software built for software and SaaS for all these specific verticals, with hardware and manufacturing being neglected, or companies building their own software and spinning their own software internally. And then you have this realization that we need to reindustrialize as a a term that's been used a lot lately and is really cool because this new reindustrialization is about renewable energy and about rockets, to space. And of course, there's a defense component, but um, it's kind of uh, and the positive side of nationalism as opposed to the toxic side of nationalism. Uh, uh, so you're seeing a lot of these software for hardware companies sprout up because they've experienced so much pain, or saw a world within these companies where they're building software internally that they could make better for everybody else. And kind of, it's not necessarily, um, naturally we're going to get more people, or we need to focus on training for people to do all of these hard things, but it's increasing the efficiency. So we're making the pie bigger, or raising the ceiling of what can be accomplished by a small team, much like your favorite topic of as of as of mm, recent podcasts, AI. Is that
Yeah,
how's that?
perfect,
Yeah.
perfect. I want you to dive a little bit into some of the problems associated with software built for software, not for hardware. So you kind of alluded to it. Now I can picture things in my mind, but I'd much rather have you tell me about like what some of these. I guess we can use like hardware as a general term here. These hardware companies, like what were they really struggling with software that was built for software as opposed to hardware? Can you break that down for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a few things. First of all, hardware takes up real physical space, and as a result, takes up real time.
Mm,
It's with software built for software. It's really focused on internal teams that are able to dive into a bug and fix that within a specified amount of time. You don't have these external dependencies like you do in hardware, and you don't have to deal with physics necessarily. Obviously, you do with the amount of compute and the amount of power and everything. Again, ties back to AI right now. Um, but it's very, very hard to maintain the practices that are used for software like Scrum, like a really strict Scrum schedule and sprints, when you have external dependencies like a part that is only made by one company in the world, or a few companies in the world, that might take 18 months for you to get, or you accidentally drop an FPGA that's $40,000 in your pre-seed hardware company or something. Um, so literally the physical constraints and ability to conceptualize and track those physical objects in time and space, literally, is one big thing. Compliance is gigantic. The biggest, when you think of all of the biggest software for software companies, Linear, Jira, all these, they're not necessarily US based. They're spectacular tools,
mm,
but we, by nature of building things in the United States, and obviously there are incredible things being built all around the world, need to be able to keep that, because of laws and regulations and compliance, um, need to be able to keep that information and data onshore, which companies owned by offshore organizations can't, or want to do necessarily,
mm, mm,
which
mm.
is totally reasonable. And then there's the internal external collaboration aspect, which this is absolutely the most self-serving point, but it happens to be true. And the reason we started Integrate was, uh, hardware is necessarily collaborative with hundreds of external entities. Not everybody is going to vertically integrate and build IMUs or ring laser gyros internal to their organization, because you can have somebody else's, well, or other very, very complex pieces that your hardware or whatever you're integrating is dependent on, are usually coming from outside sources, and they tend to be bespoke. Some of them tend to be bespoke. So whether it's valves or um, harnessing and things like this, there isn't really a one size fits all, and there are a lot of people that want to get these interfaces. So we built Integrate essentially because all of the software built for software is insular to your company. There's no way to break that fourth wall to really, really collaborate and work on the same tasks and the same projects and the same programs with external stakeholders, which is so vital to building hard.
Mm.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Um, Now, I know that you want to get into some of the industries that you guys are servicing, um, but maybe before that, and maybe then also as a segue into it, these problems that these hardware companies are experiencing. I think you kind of touched on this, but is it different depending on the industry that that's building, whether a drone or a laser or an IC engine? I guess my question is the physical product that's being built change the way that people interact or that need a system, a software system, in order to manage a large project to build it? Or is it all just kind of more or less the same?
Everybody wants to think so.
Mhm.
And what we've seen, and we're only in a handful of verticals right now, but what we've seen is that it's all pretty much the same.
Mhm.
People have different needs at different stages of the company, but once you get to full manufacturing, full program management, or a place where uh, you need something like integrate, the processes tend to shake out. It's just the translation between what EDP, DVT, or yeah, DVT before. mm, Mess that up. S- those processes versus PDR, CDR, or a more defense prescribed design review process and things like this. So everybody's speaking different languages, but saying the same thing. Definitely.
Okay. Okay. That kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And so like as we mentioned in the little pre-discussion that we had, when I was working in Europe, I was working on these like very large European projects. They do things a little bit differently than, I'm in Canada and in the States, so they do things differently over there. Um, for like a large project that was working on some aspect of an autonomous vehicle or trying to like there's a lot of like lightweighting of vehicles over there to reduce the carbon emissions, for instance. We would have to interact with tons of suppliers, as you alluded to, like the supply chain to just have one vehicle kind of put together. If you're not aware of it, it's bonkers, right? For every little thing that is the car is being built with, there's multiple suppliers for it. So I kind of want to, and again, it is a bit self-serving, but I think it is actually interesting. Um, if there's a lack of collaboration between these types of organizations, which we saw daily, it was a nightmare. Um, you're saying that integrate kind of solves that problem, um, potentially. How exactly is that done?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest problem that I saw with that every single hardware company and worked at Spire Global, Spaceflight, ABL, Astranis, all building very complex hardware, is that you would build these bespoke, beautiful, perfect schedules internally, and you'd be like, "Hell yeah, we've got this schedule." But that's constantly moving. Whether a supplier's behind, whether design engineers behind, whether marketing's behind on a release for a specific,
Mm,
party or something like this. Uh, that schedule is constantly in flux, and what we're using currently does not take full advantage of the internet. I mean, we've had 80 years, or I don't know, 60, where are we? 80, 40, 45 years or so with with the internet, and we've had the past 15 of really, really understanding how to harness it, but we're still using email to send a static project file to another entity and then having these biweekly or weekly or daily meetings just to integrate schedules. And I'm just like,
mm, mm,
why do we not have schedules and software that allows us to parse out the most granular piece of your schedule so that you can keep everything private and internal to your organization except for what you need to collaborate with somebody else on? We're not taking full advantage of this wondrous gift we have with the internet. Uh, kind of stuck in, I don't know what point oh we are on the internet, but stuck in internet 1 or 2.0, with our fundamental collaboration because of all these compliance and security concerns. But we have the technology. We can build it.
mhm.
Very,
Right.
we know how to do role-based access control to make sure that what you don't want people to see remains hidden, and what you do want people to see can be collaborated on with them directly. So that's kind of the entire premise behind Integrate.
Okay, that makes sense. That's interesting. Now obviously you have a couple clients that have tested your system for a while. One of the things I always ask many guests is like, do you have like percentages of like how much time has been saved, how much easier things are being done, and then extrapolate that to if a vehicle takes a couple of years to build from start to finish, or maybe in a factory it's like 6 months or something like that, or maybe less now. I don't know actually. But like, is that going to be cut in half? Is that like 25%, 10% savings? Like kind of both of those things are, I think, quite interesting.
Absolutely. We don't have those numbers yet. We're only about 2 years old. And we have quite a few customers, a lot we can't talk about, but in space industry, maritime, and other verticals. But we do, we have had a customer come back to it that we thought was kind of lukewarm on the software because they're only logging in every now and then. And we're like, how's it going? They're like, oh, we love it. We're like, oh, our stats aren't kind of, measuring up. And they were like, yeah, because we reduced like 20 hours of meetings a week. And I was like,
Okay.
oh, okay, that's cool. As long as that's great for us because
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, we have monthly check-ins just to make sure everybody's like synced, but because people submit their requests for date changes and we push date changes to people and they get notifications, they get emails, they get it in Slack and Teams and all this, it's just we've reduced all of our check-ins and all of the time that we're using to meld schedules back together doesn't happen. And then at the top of the pile is risk, because when you're working directly with someone on something and you see dates change real time, as opposed to having to wait 2 weeks for an update or wait a month for an update, you have substantially less risk that you're doing the wrong thing, or that you're what you can parallelize if you're waiting on a specific part and things like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so as with, and I don't want to talk about AI too much, but as with artificial intelligence, what I'm hearing from a lot of businesses that are integrating it, obviously there's, tremendous boosts in efficiency. You can have like more junior staff members working at higher levels faster, and that kind of just overall moves the organization into a much more competitive framing, if you will. To me, it sounds like your software, your product, is offering something similar within the hardware, the physical realm. The reason I'm asking this or posing this is if there's this reindustrialization. I've also heard of the term like reshoring, right? Bringing industry back from overseas. How essential is something like your tool and the growing efficiency within these organizations needed or required for this whole entire reindustrialization trend to happen? I would assume it's pretty essential if you're competing against other, Chinese or manufacturing or something like that.
Yeah, we would, you're talking to the guy that won, want to be in, everybody's tool belt. So, of course, I'm biased. Um, whether it's with Integrate or not, this capability to collaborate in real time with people across the country or in different sectors and have work asynchronously and instantly all at the same time is absolutely vital. I mean, this is why Slack, is such a wild success story because you have something that has an easy to use interface that connects you with so many different people, internal and external to your organization. So I think the entire world is transferring to this model of the ability to work where you are with anybody
Mhm.
external or internal to your company. So I would say that having a basis and a platform like this is absolutely vital from an efficiency standpoint, from a risk standpoint, from a how fast can we possibly go, especially if we find ourselves in a situation where we have to hit the go button. In the case of uh, you know, absolutely hope not, but a natural disaster or the case of uh people really getting pissed off with each other on World War. Saying it, I don't want to say the I don't want to say the WWS word. Yeah. Anyways, but uh, if we need to hit the go button, we need to be ready. In all types of scenarios. And that's not kind of a paranoid it's stance. It's just
Yeah.
We have to be able to talk to each other and make this happen seamlessly. And I think integrate can be a huge part of it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a historic reality when you actually sit back and think about it. Maybe moving a little bit away from software ideas and kind of like I like these like larger ideas, and I think you do too. Um, okay, if there's been offshoring for pick the number of decades that it's been going on, 20, 30, 40, whatever it is, and now there's a reshoring movement. Um, how much of the expertise has also gone away, and how challenging, I guess, is it to have the knowledge basis for manufacturing to actually have, and let's just focus on the States because you're there. How challenging is it to have the amount of knowledge required to actually reindustrialize a country, if that knowledge or that I guess you could call it the bespoke knowledge is maybe within the manufacturing industries of other nations now?
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, this is a hairy subject. There's a lot of missteps to be made here. But I'm just gonna dive in. I think it's absurd that we have some in the United States, and there are some spectacular, absolutely spectacular universities all around the world. So I'm not just trying to be like super nationalist or anything like this, but we have such spectacular education system, and then we say, "Cool, bye." Like that's absurd to me, and there has to be a more intelligent way of keeping. I think immigration is what makes this country spectacular and why I love it so much. And the fact that it is so difficult and so impossible is a huge problem, especially when we have such a spectacular education system to kind of bring people in. Um, so there's that tiny little subject that is not at all controversial. And then there's the big moves that have been made. I'm trying so hard here. Big moves that have been made recently, essentially extending international trade and arms regulations within the U.S. To other industries like chip manufacturing, and essentially saying, "Hey, this is the technology that was, you know, it was born a lot of different places, but then we want to have the skill set for here, so we're going to restrict it in a specific number of ways, uh, which is interesting. This is like a 10 to 30-year play out, well, let's see. But um, it is concerning that some of the skill sets that we used to have might not exist. But we're definitely, a country of fighters. So, so I think the capability to grow that knowledge base and get back into it and get back to it is here, and we're really seeing it, especially in the past 20 years with again SpaceX and Tesla, and a number of other countries. So I don't think we lost it by any means, but I think people are interested in ensuring that we keep it and don't fall down the rabbit hole. Does that answer the question? Or
Yeah,
too diplomatic.
it's I can't I guess I can't ask for more.
Okay, yeah.
Um, maybe to go back to these software communication project management systems, are there insights that you're gathering from them? And granted, it's only been a couple of years, but are there insights that you're gathering from them that actually can help the hardware construction or production process?
What was at the beginning of that? Sorry.
Are there insights or like data that you're gathering that can then like filter back or loop back into building machinery or technology faster, quicker, cheaper, etc.?
Yeah. So that's a big thrust of our initial value proposition. What we want to get to is with completely scrubbed clean, anonymized data,
Mm.
period. The ability to predict if somebody's saying, to be able to tell somebody like, hey, you said you're going to build this rocket in 3 months or something. We can't do this and we don't do this now. And I'm not getting into the whole ITAR thing with that because we're not touching that. But if somebody's building a car and they say, we're going to design and manufacture this car in 2 months, we can just be like, historically, when people have said that, 3.5 months, and still being very, very generous, but, or, 18 months for the design system, something like this, where we can kind of nudge people and just be like, hey, these have been bottlenecks that we've seen across all industries, would be spectacular, but that comes with all sorts of data rights, all types of ensuring that data is secure, and we are psychotic about data security given the sensitivity of the organizations we work with. So yes, I want to get there and I want to do that, but we are being wildly diligent about security first and ensuring that we're compliant and that all of our customers' data is treated as theirs first.
Right.
And foremost.
Right. Okay. Clear.
Yeah. But it would be really cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it obviously fits into this larger AI, feed a bunch of data to AI, get more insights, improve your business, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need to necessarily go there. But a question following from this. Okay, so we're focusing on like project management software, more or less. Communication project management. I think it encompasses quite a bit. I don't know if you have a catch-all term for Integrate and for your competitors and stuff that are helping manufacturing, production, hardware type businesses out there. Are there other digital tools that are supporting this reindustrialization of America and the West? Obviously artificial intelligence is going to be one. When I was working in Barcelona, we did a number of projects on like digital twins, for instance. Are there other things, or maybe you can pick like the top 2 or 3 that you think are supporting this, and maybe explain those for the audience if they're not familiar with them?
Yeah. I think it's sort of like, and I'm going to bring it back here, but it's sort of like AI where everybody thinks it's a brand new thing. And all these magical breakthroughs have happened in the past 10 years when it's really just Moore's law at work, and the compute has increased so much that like the people that have been working on it for 10 to 20 years are like, yep, compute just caught up. We're able to just feed it all this data. So things like model-based systems engineering, digital twin have been around for a long time. I think we just have a better grasp and ability to crunch all of these gigantic numbers that are necessary in a more edge computer or web interface. So, companies like Onshape or, Flow Engineering is really cool, and really getting into more user-focused MBSE tools that allow you to see how a change sort of percolates through, wrong word, but through an entire complex system. And we want to be that for all of program management because there are business factors that definitely influence these big changes and constraints in that way. So yeah, it's like what's old is new again, but getting more attention and becoming a little bit more accessible because of the massive amount of compute that we have available with AWS or Azure or whoever it is, mm, at our fingertips. You could put these wildly large models or intense um, uh, programs and complex systems onto a cloud. You don't have to build an entire server space uh, uh, for your company. So yeah, I think it's kind of like, wish I could use the phrase that my mom used to say, but it's like you'd probably think you invented blank as well. I kind of have that attitude toward it. The people have been thinking about this for so long. We're just getting to a place where we can actually fully take advantage of it.
Right.
And it's really cool.
Okay. Well, that's a refreshing take for sure. The time is kind of winding down here. Maybe we can focus a little bit, with the name of the podcast, looking towards the future, right? So we've talked a little bit about the past, a lot about the present, um, speculative, and for engineers and programmers, and maybe this is a little bit, um, how should I say, in bad taste to talk about speculative things that you can't measure and you can't figure out. But I love it. So if we're talking about these software tools that are supporting reindustrialization and greater efficiency and speed of building hardware, like I've talked, especially during COVID, a lot about like virtual reality or augmented reality or some of these AI even back then. Technologies that were emerging or like assumption there was an assumption that they would emerge within the next couple of years. Now, maybe VR and AR is not such a great example because it kind of dwindled in interest. I hope that they'll take back off in the next couple of years. Um, do you see any other kinds of technologies, emerging technologies, kind of on the horizon that are going to come in and uh, produce positive impacts for the industries that you're looking at?
Yeah. Few answers here, and a few things I'm really, really excited about, and then kind of an unfortunately darker answer, but really excited for modular nuclear and energy. Honestly, like there's like safe nuclear. I know sounds like a contradiction, or oxymoronic, but really, really excited for what we are able to do in that realm, as long as we're able to keep it safe, keep it tame, but also that's kind of the upper limit for AI and a lot of other resources is energy, and always has been. And I think we're turning the corner on some things. I know way too little about fusion to speak to it, but I would love to see a limitless energy future that allowed us to be kinder to each other in the world. To put it gently. um, and So I'm really, really excited for that. I'm really, really excited about AI being embodied. So like,
Okay.
who doesn't want a robot, man? I mean, could if we could just have, like it could be scary and Terminator and all these, but uh I'm a messy dude. I just want something to pick up my laundry or fold it for me or something like this.
Sure. Sure.
Just clean but messy.
And then you could think about all the efficiency gains that humanity would get, right? If you have a
Yeah.
personal servant or two or three, you can just focus on your work, focus on interactions with friends and family, and
Yeah.
not have to deal with all this bullshit that we have to deal with every day.
Yeah, exactly. And it lifts it would lift so many people up and not having to do, specific things, which is the hope for all technology, that it's a lever that allows us to do more with less, that allows, lifts people up out of poverty. That's why I can't believe the future is here with constellations such as Starlink and Kuiper, and the fact that you can buy $1,000 hub that served an entire village in Alaska or anything like this. And then, I worked with Astrana, so geo being able to influence that as well. So that's not even the future anymore. 5 years ago, that's what I was like, we need to get, internet to everybody. Um, and then I think, on the darker side of things, I think war is going to influence our future as it has in the past. So,
Yeah.
but something that know nothing about, even though one of my close friends is very, very involved in it, and seems to starting to yield some really cool results, is quantum computing, of course. And I think, we're starting to get to a point where it's less nascent, more steady, I think, but I also know nothing about it, so I'm more excited to learn about it.
Yeah, I've brought on a number of very interesting, way too smart quantum computing guests onto the podcast, and every time they explain to me what it means and what it is and what it's going to do, and I'm like, okay, well, that was interesting, but I'm going to have to bring another guest on to explain it all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might have someone for you.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's yeah. Well, I think the future is fascinating. Like, this is what keeps me up at night, in a mode of like intense excitement. All these things that you're talking about, other guests, of course. But it's always really interesting to see how I can't remember exactly how you put it, but like technologies that have been around for a long time, they're just maybe getting a little bit more attention, can already bring perhaps more benefit than thinking about the metaverse or crazy AGI or embodied AI or whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. Well, John, is there anything else that I should ask you or that you want to leave the audience with? I think we've covered quite a gamut of points here on the podcast.
I'm afraid that I might step into less diplomatic territory if we keep going.
Very good. Well, then we'll stop the recording. We can talk about that after. And
yeah, no, but I've loved the conversation so far. Thank you.
Yeah. Absolute pleasure. No, again, I said it this before we started recording. It's a breath of fresh air to not just talk about artificial intelligence. As much as I love it, as much as I have fallen for the hype and I use it every day and all this sort of stuff.
Oh yeah.
It is still good. This is not just an AI podcast. This is emerging technologies in the future. So, thank you so much for coming on. I'll have your LinkedIn and your website up on the show notes. Is there any other place that you want people to follow or reach out to you and your team, of course?
Yeah. Follow Integrate on LinkedIn, and then integrate.co. We have careers. We'll probably continue to have many careers opportunities open there, and people either love or hate the website. So drop us a comment. No one has just reached out to say, hey, I absolutely love it, or I hate it. So I'm looking forward to getting some of those comments. But integrate.co. Yeah.
Interesting. Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciated the conversation, and all the best on your business journey. It's always exciting. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Terrific. Thanks. Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.